When the A-Team premiered in 1983, it arrived disguised as light entertainment, but beneath its explosive charm lay a very specific response to its time. The series was conceived in the long shadow of the Vietnam War, at a moment when American television was cautiously renegotiating how soldiers could be portrayed. Instead of returning veterans broken or bitter, the A-Team presented men who were resourceful, loyal, and morally certain, yet permanently displaced. They were heroes without a country, operating in the margins, and that contradiction became the emotional engine of the show. The premise itself was unusually bleak for a primetime action series. Four former soldiers are falsely accused, imprisoned, and then forced to live as fugitives. This injustice is never resolved. Unlike most television setups, the A-Team does not promise redemption through official channels. The system does not correct itself. That unresolved accusation gives the series a quiet undercurrent of exile, turning every mission into both an act of service and defiance. Today, that sense of permanent mistrust toward authority feels far more pointed than it did in the early 1980s. Colonel John Hannibal Smith was designed as a strategist rather than a brute. George Peppard's performance emphasized planning, deception, and theatricality. Hannibal doesn't simply win battles, he stages them. His disguises and elaborate setups reflect a belief that intelligence and preparation matter more than firepower. This was a deliberate contrast to the era's growing fascination with lone wolf action heroes who solved problems with sheer force. Hannibal wins by thinking several steps ahead, a quality that gave the show an almost chess-like rhythm. Templeton Faceman Peck introduced another unexpected dimension. He is not a fighter at heart, but a negotiator. His weapons are charm, language, and social awareness. In many episodes, violence is avoided entirely because Face has already opened the right door or spoken to the right person. This emphasis on persuasion over confrontation quietly expanded the definition of heroism on television, suggesting that survival could depend on emotional intelligence as much as physical skill. Baracus, perhaps the show's most iconic figure, was carefully constructed to project danger without cruelty. Mr. T's intimidating appearance was balanced by a strict moral code. Bay does not kill, and he is deeply protective of the innocent. This restraint was intentional. The creators wanted a character who embodied strength without savagery, particularly important in a decade when action television was increasingly scrutinized for its influence on younger viewers. BA's fear of flying, often played for humor, also served to humanize him, grounding his power in vulnerability. Murdock, the team's pilot, occupies a more ambiguous space. Officially declared insane, he is both the most unpredictable and, at times, the most perceptive member of the group. His apparent madness allows him to say what others cannot, slipping truths past authority under the cover of instability. This trope, rooted in classical storytelling, positions the fool as the hidden observer. In retrospect, Murdock reflects a growing awareness of how institutions label nonconformity as disorder. One of the strangest and most enduring curiosities of the A-Team is its relationship with violence. Explosions are constant, vehicles flip spectacularly, yet almost no one is seriously injured. Bullets miss, crashes spare lives, and enemies walk away unharmed. This was not simply censorship. It was a conscious stylistic decision to transform warfare into choreography rather than consequence. The show presents conflict as spectacle, allowing audiences to enjoy tension without moral discomfort. Today, that sanitized chaos feels almost surreal, a relic of a period when television sought excitement without aftermath. The show's heavy use of improvised weaponry is another subtle reflection of its themes. Hannibal's famous line about loving it when a plan comes together is always followed by machines built from scrap. These contraptions symbolize ingenuity born from scarcity. The team does not possess institutional resources, they adapt what they find. This improvisational ethic mirrors the broader cultural admiration for self-reliance that defined much of early 1980s popular media. Music also played a critical role in shaping the show's identity. The instantly recognizable theme is triumphant, almost celebratory, reinforcing the idea that despite their status as fugitives, these men are righteous. The melody carries confidence rather than menace, instructing the audience how to feel before a single line is spoken. That emotional clarity helped the A-Team become comforting rather than confrontational, a quality that explains its enduring nostalgia. At its core, the A-Team offered a fantasy of moral certainty in an uncertain world. Problems were local, villains were clear, and solutions, though explosive, were ultimately restorative. Yet beneath that reassurance lay a quieter truth. These men could fix everything except their own exile. That unresolved tension, hidden behind cigar smoke and flying vans, is what gave the series a depth that still resonates, preparing the ground for a legacy far more complex than its surface ever suggested. As the A-Team settled into its rhythm, the series revealed a carefully engineered balance between rebellion and reassurance. While the team lived outside the law, they never challenged its ideals. Each mission reinforced a moral clarity that distinguished them from criminals and corrupt officials alike. This separation was crucial. The A-Team were fugitives by circumstance, not by character, a distinction that allowed audiences to root for men who broke rules without breaking trust. The recurring presence of military antagonists hunting the team added a layer of tragic irony. These pursuers were often portrayed as competent and disciplined, not cartoon villains. They represented the institution the team once served, now turned against them. This dynamic transformed each chase into a symbolic confrontation between loyalty and bureaucracy. The conflict was not personal hatred, but procedural inevitability, suggesting that systems can persecute even those built to defend them. The iconic black van deserves special attention. More than a vehicle, it functioned as a moving fortress and a symbol of unity. Its anonymity allowed the team to blend into urban landscapes, reinforcing their status as ghosts within society. Unlike the sleek cars of other action heroes, the van was practical, utilitarian, and collective. It emphasized that the team moved as one, never as individuals seeking glory. Costume design also played a subtle narrative role. Hannibal's disguises were not merely comic relief, they were extensions of his philosophy. By constantly reinventing his appearance, he denied his enemies a fixed target. Face's tailored suits projected confidence and access, while BA's heavy chains and combat gear communicated strength and readiness. Murdock's ever-changing outfits mirrored his fluid identity, blurring the line between performance and personality. Together, their visual language reinforced the idea that identity itself could be a tactical choice. The show's episodic structure followed a ritualistic pattern that audiences quickly learned to anticipate. A wronged client appears, injustice is established, the plan is assembled, and resolution follows. This repetition was not laziness, but comfort. In a decade marked by economic uncertainty and global tension, the A-Team offered a dependable moral universe. No matter how chaotic the world felt, this story always restored balance by the end of the hour. Another underappreciated element is how often the team assists those failed by institutions. Small business owners, farmers, war veterans, and marginalized communities frequently appear as clients. These choices grounded the show in everyday struggles rather than abstract threats. The A-Team did not save the world, they fixed what had been overlooked. This focus on local justice gave the series a populist spirit that still resonates with audiences who value fairness over scale. The chemistry among the actors was not accidental. George Peppard's leadership extended beyond the script, often shaping on-set dynamics. His insistence on professionalism clashed at times with the show's playful tone, creating real tension that subtly informed Hannibal's authoritative presence. Mr. T, new to acting, brought authenticity through discipline rather than technique, while Dirk Benedict's improvisational instincts added unpredictability. These contrasting approaches enriched the ensemble, making their camaraderie feel earned rather than manufactured. One curious contradiction lies in the show's treatment of military expertise. The team demonstrates advanced tactical knowledge, engineering skill, and combat training, yet these abilities are often applied to non-lethal outcomes. This contradiction transforms warfare into problem-solving. Explosives become tools for spectacle, not destruction. The emphasis shifts from defeating enemies to outsmarting them, reframing conflict as intellect over annihilation. The show's humor plays a crucial role in maintaining this balance. Jokes often arise in moments of danger, diffusing tension without undermining stakes. Murdock's antics, Face's vanity, and BA's exasperation humanize scenarios that might otherwise feel grim. This humor does not trivialize conflict. It makes endurance bearable. Laughter becomes a survival mechanism, a way of reclaiming control in hostile situations. The A-Team also reflects a transitional moment in television production. Practical effects, real stunts, and physical sets dominate the visual landscape. Vehicles truly flip, buildings genuinely explode, and actors occupy real space. This tangible energy gives the action a weight that digital techniques would later replace. Today, those practical sequences feel almost artisanal, reminding viewers of a time when spectacle was built rather than rendered. By the midpoint of its run, the A-Team had become more than a weekly adventure. It was a reassurance ritual, offering audiences the fantasy that intelligence, loyalty, and preparation could overcome injustice without sacrificing humanity. Yet beneath the explosions and one-liners, the central wound remained unhealed. The team was still running, still hiding, still serving a society that refused to clear their names. That unresolved tension continued to drive the series forward, setting the stage for deeper reflections on freedom, identity, and belonging that would define its lasting legacy. As the A-Team moved toward its later seasons, the series began to reveal a quieter truth beneath its familiar formula. The men were not simply running from the law, they were running from permanence. They never settle, never build, never remain. Every victory is temporary, every alliance fleeting. This constant motion transforms the show into a story about survival in transit, a condition that resonates deeply with anyone who has ever felt professionally useful yet socially unanchored. One of the most unusual narrative choices is that the team's innocence is never legally proven. The series repeatedly flirts with resolution, introducing hearings, investigations, and sympathetic officials, only to withdraw closure at the last moment. This refusal to restore order is significant. It suggests that justice, once delayed too long, becomes irrelevant. The A-Team does not wait to be forgiven. They act as though moral clarity matters more than official validation, a perspective that quietly challenges institutional authority without openly rebelling against it. Hannibal's leadership evolves subtly over time. Early on, he is exuberant, almost playful in his mastery of deception. Later episodes reveal a more measured figure, aware of the toll constant vigilance takes on his team. His famous satisfaction when a plan comes together begins to sound less triumphant and more relieved. Planning is no longer a thrill, it is a necessity. This shift adds a layer of fatigue to the character, suggesting that leadership is sustained not by confidence, but by endurance. Face's arc is equally revealing. His charm, initially portrayed as effortless, becomes increasingly strategic. He learns when not to seduce, when not to negotiate, and when silence is more effective than persuasion. This evolution reflects a growing awareness that manipulation, even for good ends, carries consequences. The show never punishes Face for his tactics, but it allows him to mature beyond vanity, turning social intelligence into restraint. BA's fear of flying, often played for laughs, acquires deeper meaning over time. Each forced flight reinforces his lack of control, a reminder that even the strongest member of the team must occasionally surrender autonomy. This recurring vulnerability prevents BA from becoming a static symbol of power. His strength is contextual, not absolute, and that limitation keeps the character grounded and human. Murdock's ambiguity remains one of the series' most provocative elements. The question of whether he is truly insane is never definitively answered. His institutionalization functions less as diagnosis and more as containment. Murdock thrives when rules collapse, when identity becomes fluid. In that sense, he is the freest member of the team precisely because he cannot be easily classified. The show uses him to explore how society manages those who do not fit clean categories, often confusing difference with disorder. Another curious feature of the A-Team is its treatment of success. The team is rarely paid, and when they are, money is treated as incidental. Compensation matters only insofar as it allows them to continue operating. Wealth is not accumulated, possessions are temporary, and comfort is never pursued. This rejection of material reward reinforces the show's moral economy, where value is measured in loyalty and competence rather than profit. The villains of later episodes also become more mundane. Early antagonists are overtly corrupt or violent, but later threats often emerge from bureaucracy, greed, or neglect. These enemies are less dramatic but more familiar. By shifting focus from grand villains to everyday injustice, the series acknowledges that harm is often systemic rather than spectacular. This grounded antagonism gives the later seasons a quieter relevance that is easy to overlook. The show's visual language remains consistent to the end. Bright daylight dominates, avoiding shadows and moral ambiguity in its imagery. This aesthetic choice reinforces transparency. Nothing important happens in darkness. Plans are executed in the open, solutions are visible, and outcomes are clear. In an era increasingly fascinated with antiheroes and moral grayness, this visual honesty feels almost defiant. Despite its popularity, the A-Team never attempts to modernize its values. It does not grow cynical, nor does it parody itself. This consistency is part of its endurance. The show knows what it believes in and refuses to apologize for it. Loyalty matters. Preparation matters. Innocence matters, even when it is not recognized. The final irony of the A-Team is that its heroes never win the one battle that matters most. They never stop running. Yet this perpetual motion becomes its own kind of freedom. By refusing to settle into a compromised peace, the team preserves its integrity. They remain available to those in need, unbound by geography or allegiance. In the end, the A-Team endures not because of explosions or catchphrases, but because it offers a rare fantasy that competence, loyalty, and moral clarity can survive without reward. These men are not celebrated, promoted, or absolved. They are simply useful again and again, wherever injustice appears. And in that quiet persistence, hidden behind disguises, smoke, and laughter, the series finds a dignity that still resonates long after the engines fade and the van disappears down the road.